Welcome everyone to this very special ETRise webinar. Whoever would have thought at the beginning of March this year that entire workforce of every organization probably in the country would have to operate from home. Work from home as a concept has been in practice for decades, but never has the world seen an exercise of this magnitude. The objective of this webinar is to discuss if work from home in the current format is just a temporary phenomenon or something that is here to stay. Can organizations look at work from home as a viable option, especially with people now complaining that whatever boundaries remain between work and life have almost disappeared? We have with us today Anjali Raghuvanshi, Chief People Officer, Randstad India, and Ayush Jaiswal, Co-founder and CEO of Pesto Tech. Thank you both for being a part of this. Let me get to the first question, and that being when the lockdown eventually gets over, but the virus is still around, is work from home still going to be around, or you think companies would prefer employees come back and get on with their with their normal work? Anjali, if you want to go first.
Sure, Pran. So thank you so much for welcoming me to this webinar. And to begin with, I think when I was in college, one of my professor always used to have this very famous "it depends" for everything as an answer, right? So I think in a situation like this, if you are reading newspaper, you would have seen that even with the relaxation, especially in Karnataka sense, where from 21st, there were certain relaxations applied, you saw organizations being very apprehensive in terms of even going back to work fully and taking all their employees back to work. So I think from an organization standpoint, people are watching, and they really want to be in a wait and watch mode, because it's at the end of the day, it's about our employees' safety, right? And that's the most important thing. So yes, from that sense, and if the way the pandemic is, and if the infection continues to be there, you would not see really organizations operating at 100% strength. In fact, the guidelines are around 10% or 25% to begin with, and then eventually move with a larger strength if need be. So in that sense, a lot of organizations are already wondering that does it make sense for us to go back and to work completely 100%? Because some of us have been pleasantly surprised to know that we actually can seamlessly work even in such a situation. Yes, of course, some work like a beauty salon or a restaurant server, of course, cannot operate in this situation because their job is like that. But especially consulting service environment, especially in services like our kind of HR services environment, it has been seen that we've been able to take care of our clients and candidates even from home, and ensuring that there is business continuity. So, but yes, again, we can't be making a very overly generic statement here or a very oversimplified statement here, because we have to look at the cross sections of the industry. There are some who can, and some roles will still not be able to operate. So again, I think this will really throw this challenge in front of the organizations to go back and really start assessing which roles can perform, which roles cannot. But ideally, I think the stance will be that the roles that can perform 100% and can really work well from home, they would want them to continue working from home in this situation, and maybe even going forward.
Right. Ayush, yours is an organization which works from home normally. I mean, before the pandemic took place, you work from home even now. But what do you think is going to be for others around you?
Got it. So, Pran, I think I'll just share some context and kind of like our experiences in the past as well. Especially in tech, right? And we have had so many people who have been working from home, or let's say remote, for the last 2 years. Now, one thing I would like to kind of like set the record straight that these are two different things. I think our prediction was that towards the end of 2020, a lot of engineers would go remote. So in terms of, if you look at it from a point of view where you're considering tech as a separate industry, then engineers would have to go remote by the end of 2020 is what we predicted. But it happened a lot sooner because of, of course, the pandemic. But we feel that in future, in the post-corona world, like if I consider your question which you asked earlier, that are people going to go back to office? I believe 50% of them will, because I think the pandemic is a lot more than the just working from home, right? And working remote has become more difficult because of the pandemic. But I also feel that people are going to realize that they were wasting a lot of time in meaningless meetings. They were wasting a lot of time in travel, and that was just causing a lot of unnecessary problems, like creating pollution, increasing dependency on major cities, so on and so forth. So I feel that 50% will get back to work and will be keen to get back to work because of a certain gatherings which they have been missing. But the other 50%, especially in tech, will choose to not go back to office. Now, whether that 50% which I'm talking about, am I saying that they'll be working from home? Maybe not. But the point I'm trying to make here is that they will for sure be working remote. And the way it's going to go down is that when the top talent wants to work remote, that can be from home, that can be from a nearby co-working space, then the best of the best companies would be forced to have remote flexi policies moving forward. And I feel that there is a very, very strong trend coming up over next 6 to 10 months or so with respect to remote work. So I think remote work is here to stay, and this is not something which is pretty new. This has been there for the last 10 years. We have got organizations like GitLab, Zapier, who have been working remote, who have built wonderful companies which are large size companies, more than 1,000 people, and they have got zero offices. So I think this is not something which is new. I think people will have to learn how to work remote, and I think people are going to love it, especially in tech.
Right. To set the record straight, Ayush, you have zero offices, right?
Mm-hmm. So I would say that I haven't been to any office since 2019, and I went remote as well. And there was a small part of my team who used to work out of co-working spaces based on their personal preference. But we had been operating remotely and have been having remote flexibility for a while.
Right. Anjali, if I can come to you, taking a cue from what Ayush said, uh, if we go by what he says, and that is, you know, remote working and work from home is here to stay, can this be a part of larger organization strategy? What do you think can be some of the benefits here?
Yeah. Of course, I mean, the way it's going, it has to be part of the larger strategy. If you see in the, before the pandemic really hit us, I mean, people used to talk about flexibility. They used to, of course, I think most of the organization, and especially IT organizations, had clearly a work from home policy, right? People used to be on long working from home. In fact, some roles, even in HR, within HR, comp and ben roles were traditionally done from home because you necessarily don't have to be in office. So I think as a policy, it always existed within the organization. But what is a policy? A policy is a lot about, guidelines that you define in terms of, a frame within which you operate. But I think it's time now to really look at a remote work program, because, remote working is not just about that I've given you a flexibility that you go operate out of your home. It does require a lot of things that need to be put in place. First of all, look at simple things like tools. I'm sure many organizations who are very VPN driven actually face that their bandwidth literally kind of shrunk as in they went into work from home and systems crashed, right? The ones who were on cloud actually survived, and fortunately we were one of them who were on G Suite and we were on cloud, so we survived. But then I know of so many people who had issues during the initial phase. So simple things like tools, equipment, it's not just about giving a laptop to your employees and sending them home and saying that, hey, now you should be working. There's so much more that needs to happen in terms of giving the equipment. Simple things like what behaviors do you expect out of people when they're working from home? How do you set that as an organization that, okay, this is how you are supposed to behave? Then culture, right? I mean, it's simple saying that what is exactly culture, but think about it, what your employees are experiencing today in office, those water cooler moments, right? You cannot give that to in their houses. So how will you replicate this culture virtually? for those who are working from home, and not let them feel that they are left out from the overall office dynamics, right? Because that also plays a very important role in an employee's life. So I think these will have to be considered, accountabilities will have to be set and all of that. And so which means it needs a program where you set it, and it has to have a buy-in from the leadership to the employees, and it is run in that way. So I think, and plus also think from an employee's perspective, I don't think in today's scenario, every employee will choose to work from home, right? I mean, some naturally love to be in an office environment, and some naturally love to work from home. So you got to make the right choices as well, and hire the right people for working from home, because skills for a work from home person is very, very different compared to the one who's operating from office. I mean, to begin with, I think importantly, you need to be a very skillful communicator. Probably I see the ones who work very well from home are the one who are overly communicative on what they're doing, how are they progressing. Work ethics as well, right? It has to be very important. I mean, you're away from my eyes. To how do you build trust? So I think all of this will play a very, very important role. And I think we as an organization have to really think of it as a program which you really, really drive it into organization.
I think I'll interrupt here for a bit because I think Anjali
Yeah,
said
Ayush.
something.
Yeah, and also probably you can add that, why did you decide to work out of home?
Absolutely. So I think most of the things which Anjali is saying, I think I agree to most of it, right? But I think like everything which she's mentioning is actually a solvable problem, and I'll go towards that one by one, right? I think if I recall, she talked about creating water cooler moments, or how do you enable that cross team collaboration in a remote environment, right? In which people not just talk to work but also build meaningful relationships. The second point she mentioned was that some people just like going to offices, and that's why I tried to set the record straight in the beginning that remote work and work from home are two different things, guys. It's like some people are just not made for work from home, and it's like remote work is a totally different monster altogether, right? Work from home is of course like a subset of that. And the third point which she mentioned is that communities, right? Like she mentioned that how do you keep yourself motivated, so on and so forth, if you have to work in that kind of like environment, right? So let me actually give everybody some demos here, right? So I think that the first point I'll mention is that water cooler moments, right? So what do you do? How do you fix that, right? I think one of the biggest things when you work remote is to be very proactive in communication, because what the other person is doing, it becomes difficult for you to judge that. But let's take an example from my own company, right? I'm sorry if I kind of like uh, uh, embarrass myself somewhere, but I think I would love to show a live demo so that people can also get a view into that. So one quick example, how do you enable cross-team collaboration is this. Now, when people are working in different time zones, right, we are kind of like a company in which people work at different times and they collaborate asynchronously most of the times. So how do we enable that, right? One quick example is that if you look at our Slack, here is everybody who works here, but instead of their surname, we don't care about surnames of people, right? Especially in a small company, because people usually have different names, right? So instead of their surnames, they write the times in which they work, right? So we know that in what time who is available for synchronous communication, right? Now, when we know that somebody is available for synchronous communication, how do we do the water cooler chats, which Anjali was talking about? Now, I have got this tool, which basically is a tool which is our office space, let's say. Now here I can look at everybody who is currently working, who is currently at their desk working, and is not taking a lunch break or whatever, right? So let's say I pick up this guy, right? And Shubham, he does sales at Pesto, and I just invited him for a casual chat, right? And one second, and Shubham should be here any moment. So what this tool does is that to collaborate synchronously, it allows you to sort of like, ping anyone and get them in office. Looks like Shubham is somehow not here. It's a very bad failed demo. I'll try to invite somebody else. Cool. Hello.
Yes, we could hear you.
Oh, okay. Right. I'm sorry. I want to show people this because this is something which enabled me to go remote big time. Right. Hey, Shubham. Yeah. How's it going, man? I was in the middle of a webinar. I just called to give a demo. Yeah. A nice hairstyle. Yeah. Take it. Okay. He just got ahead. Right? So this is what I was trying to show, that our feeling that people are not around us will slowly go away because the infrastructure which exists in office spaces has now moved to tools, right? And now you can collaborate in a remote environment as well. The second thing which she was mentioning is that people have to be very proactive with respect to their communication. And I think if they are proactive, then this is how it happens, right? What you can do next is that you can create scheduled chats with your team in which you basically are scheduling coffee chats, no agenda coffee meetings every other day, right? So we've got a bot in our Slack which basically takes 4 people randomly and creates a coffee chat for them, right? And the third thing which my learning was that if office spaces go away, office spaces create a sense of belongingness for you, right? What if office spaces go away and people don't like working from home? So we have got a lot of Pesto graduates who actually love working out of Pesto's office or some other WeWork in Bangalore where they go. So we believe that corporate offices are going to go away, and instead of that, communities are going to bring people together, because in a community you're going to learn from different kinds of people. So no matter where you're working from, people would rather be parts of communities where they learn from and they work with, right? And I feel that scale of community will happen over the period of time as well.
Right. I am constantly being asked which tool was used in the demo. So I think
Oh,
people
okay.
want to know.
The tool is called Remotion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remotion is a tool used. So I think there are tools, there are technologies around. Once I think you institutionalize and you know work from home becomes more pervasive, I think people will start discovering these tools.
True.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so Anjali, uh, what kind of roles do you think are best suited for work from home? Ayush mentioned about engineers and stuff like that. According to you, what do you think suits work from home the best?
Yeah, I think, of course, there could be, it's a vast industry. There could be several roles if we go into breaking down into each industry. But knowledge workers, I think, most easily will be the ones who can operate from home without much challenges. Of course, where physically delivering a product or a service is a critical element. Those are the areas I feel that you will have struggles. Like simple example, as I get the ones who the delivery people, right? I mean, who are delivering your groceries, your food. I mean, you can't expect them to be working from home. Or as I said, the beauty salons, which people are really looking forward to going back to as the lockdown gets over, right? That's another piece that people keep discussing. So I think those are the roles. Petrol bunk, like you have people have to be physically there. So some of those works, of course, cannot be work. But yes, I consulting, for that example, I mean, that's the industry I represent as well. It's very, very easy for you to go back to go be in a work from home situation. It's not difficult. IT, of course, technology has tried and tested it, and that's how you see so many tools. In fact, I was attending a conference in Pune, and one of the speakers actually was from Cisco, and they spoke about that, how they have reduced the number of offices in the last few years. And you would have seen even TCS quoting that how they're having a plan in few years to really kind of move more towards a work from home situation. So I think IT definitely. I think sectors which will find it difficult also is finance, insurance, and organizations who use very proprietary applications, which is very difficult for them to give it to you while you work from home. We had some funny incidents where there was an organization, and we support them in from an infrastructure perspective. Without naming them, they actually had to transport desktops, right? Because the people could not work from home, and we saw so many organizations who were doing this in the lockdown period. So these organizations will find it difficult. Again, VPN, not every organization has. If you are a 26,000 large organization, If you have it only as a bandwidth for only 8,000, then how do you ensure the remaining 16,000 working? So there are several things. There's no easy answer over here, but again, as organizations have realized several truths during this lockdown, right? People have figured out ways of working. So I think as we go back, we will be smarter than what we were before we went into the lockdown. And I'm sure we will discover that there are more roles that can, but broadly, these are the challenges I see, or these are the roles I see can operate easily from home.
And Anjali, within manufacturing, is work from home possible?
So again, and I have had an experience in manufacturing, so I can say for instance, they operate like it's a channel selling, setup that they have. You have dealerships which are physically run. People can learn, of course, from Tesla's example, where Tesla actually took away all their dealerships, and they said that actually we'll be selling only through our websites or our online selling modules. So I think maybe that's a model manufacturing could try, and you may not necessarily need physically people sitting in the dealerships and really doing too many people sitting in the dealerships and selling. But some like production environment where you are in the factories and you are really building the car, I don't think that will be something that you can do everything from your home. There could be some roles even there which you can possibly necessarily operate even from home. So I think in every industry you will see as people go back, they will be charting it out, because you will have to. You don't have a choice in this situation. You cannot necessarily go 100% back to work. We don't know how long that prevails. So you will see organizations going back and really going back to the drawing board and really carving out which are the roles which can, which are the roles which cannot.
Right. Ayush, you want to add something?
No, I think I majorly agree to her in most parts. I think the only thing I would like to add here would be that I've seen recently that, and of course, coming from different other entrepreneur friends which I have, people are preferring to close deals now without meeting, which was not the norm earlier. Like international clients would ask you to come to Dubai, Singapore, or wherever before closing a large ticket size deal. But all of those deals are now getting closed on Zoom. And if we are looking at these things lasting in post-corona world, I think the efficiency of work will increase dramatically, because people will be more comfortable closing deals over a video conference because they realize it's more productive.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, we've been experiencing that, where we have people really closing the deals on hangout meetings. Yeah, pretty possible.
Right. Are you saying with you? What are some of the work from home etiquettes? Can I use, say, a filter with my boss, or do I, run the risk of being fired?
Oh, okay. Let me actually start that. I think you have to be a really bad boss if you're firing people for using these good filters. It's like I think we love using filters. Like if I'm going on a large ticket size deal, my age increases by 10 years, so you can do all of this using filters. So I don't think that bosses will, or people who are good leaders, one sec, would be against this. I personally highly encourage people in my own company to do this. It's kind of fun, and I feel that it acts as an icebreaker, or as a fun activity when you're actually working, over video hangouts, because there are no more, coffee which you can have with people. There are no more hangouts you can do. You can't go out with people. So how else do you build those relationships? So I think like filters should highly be encouraged, and it's fun, and it's kind of like creates the environment sometimes for the companies. Otherwise, I think etiquettes, with respect to etiquettes, I think there is one thing which I was like showing you earlier before the webinar started, and I feel that this is one of the biggest things which people should realize when they start working from home, right? And I think over the period of time, like I think 1 to 2 months into working from home, you will start feeling some certain kind of fatigue, right? And this comes like you'll feel sleepy all day and all those things, right? This comes because of lack of consistency. And I'm trying to explain you using logic and graph that how this works, right? So I'll quickly show you this. This is just a graph of expectation versus reality of your productivity with respect to time, right? So I call these short-term distractions. What happens is that whenever you're working, you are at your maximum productivity. You feel like I'm going to take a break to feed my dog or to do something very small, right? Which does not take a lot of time, and you feel that you'll get back to work and you'll be productive again, and then you see that these boxes is your work hours, right? I feel this is the wrong way to look at it, and you need to create one space in your home if you're working from home, which you're working, in which you avoid those short-term distractions. Reason being that the reality is that when you get distracted by anything, it takes a certain amount of time period for you to get productive again, right? To reach your maximum productivity. So this gray area is what your productivity loss is what it looks like, right? So I think looking at it from that point of view, it becomes important to avoid short-term distractions and see how you can be make yourself productive. I think apart from that, if you're getting on calls, doing specific things like not creating a lot of noise in the background, or I think the right way to think about this is that as long as your activities does not interfere anyone else on the call, you're good. It's like some people say that you have to wear formals. I think you made me wear a shirt because I've got only black t-shirts, right, guys? Like, I don't wear a shirt while working from home. I had to put this on record. Like, Pran was making a lot of fun of this. But, any of your activities does not affect or interfere as long as you're not, interfering in the group's activity or things like that. I think that if you keep that in mind, everything else will fall in place.
Right. Anjali, your views on this?
Yes, so I think again, I would say it depends on, like he took an example of doing this with a boss. Of course, if I have that, I mean, within an organization, I think these are fun things to do, because even we, as we are figuring out our coffee moments, we have something called happy hours in our, every day we try to do with our people, just to kind of take them off the, everyday struggle of work. And it's been challenging also being in the lockdown. So in moments like these, using filters like this, I think is fun, right? I mean, it's kind of, so who am I going to be today? So it's a fun thing. But yes, at the same time, if I'm in a client meeting, I have to keep the sensitivities of the client in mind, right? I mean, we use filters, the client may be like, okay, who am I dealing with here? So it is very, very clear that you have very clear norms out here that, okay, this is very internal and not external. So, and especially in our kind of, services industry, it is very important. I mean, client is, is somebody who's the most important and our candidate. So we need to be very careful there. But yes, internally, I think I'm absolutely for this idea. I remember he even shared during the dry run that it's snap camera, and I think I'm going to use that for some of our internal coffee chats.
Wonderful. So, for the audience, there would be a small poll question which comes up on your screens for 30 seconds. I would encourage everyone who's watching us to take part in that. And if we can go ahead with the questions, and I think one of the most basic questions being that what happens to productivity? Does productivity go down? Does it go up? Does it remain the same? Anjali, what do you think?
I think I'll bring a little different angle here, because if you go by the research and report, it actually says that work from home is a very productive model, right? It clearly says if you go to the net and you start searching about work from home, is it productive? Yes. But I think there are certain, things that we need to keep in mind. We were talking about initially that as a skill, you need to be overly communicative to ensure that the employer understands that, yes, you are putting in your 100%. At the same time, there is a lot of trust that this requires, right? I mean, just imagine if your manager did not trust in you, and you don't have that psychological safety, and you don't have that you can't be yourself in a work from home situation. Because let's go back to why exactly offices have problem in deploying work from home. It's primarily, the reason is trust, because people don't trust that you will actually put in your 100% from home. It's not a fact. You may be putting more than, I mean, in fact, if you ask me my 35 days of lockdown experience, I think I've been working more than ever. My calendars are much more packed than even when physically I used to be in office. So I think I look at it from that perspective that, it's not just about whether productivity is not just an individual's responsibility, but an organization's too. So mutually, you have to create a structure and an environment that actually makes both work very well, right? So having that psychological safety, having that trust within your people, and at the same time, people having the right work ethics. I think these two things, if they come together, I definitely do not believe why should a work from home not be a productive model. I mean, in a city like Bangalore, who loves to travel 1.5 hours one way, right? And it's a boon for many that way. And I'm sure that the same goes for Mumbai and Delhi, where people do spend a lot of time commuting to office. So I think I would like to look at it from that perspective.
Right. Ayush, your views on productivity?
Yeah, absolutely, Pran. I think I can keep going on and on productivity and how do you actually make yourself productive and what are the effects it has. But I think I'll try to keep the answer short and whether it affects the productivity or not, I feel big time because even if you're traveling an hour, just 1 hour both ways combined every day, then if we look at 8-hour work days, then I am looking at 1 month added to your year's work. You know, if you do the math, it will turn out to be 1 month of work hours. So I think just by avoiding travel time, there is 1 month being added. If you look at other things, in which you probably waste your time by going to an office space, you will, probably come out with a much larger time. Now, thinking about it from the point of view that how do we actually help, the audience make themselves more productive, I will kind of like would love to mention a few things which helps them on that front. I think, as she was saying, Anjali, I agree to her that while working from home, you're actually more productive. But what happens is that communication becomes a problem. So I think something which I would encourage people to practice would be one would be over communication, and second point would be documentation. I think these are two very basic things, but very hard to build habits for. So when you're working on something, it's important to not just think about something, it's also important to document those thought processes so that people who are not with you actually realize how did you reach a conclusion, right? So I think uh, provided that you're practicing these things, I've got a few things which might be helpful, which we have documented for everyone on remote.pesto.tech. I'll just go through this. The first one was having a to-do list, right? I think creating a to-do list, and if you have a small team, you can actually share a shared to-do list app. I use etiquette for myself, but I think that makes you pretty productive. The second point is having a fixed schedule, right? Work from home can very quickly become work all the time or work as you please, and I think both are disastrous. So that is why having a fixed schedule when you're working is extremely important. The third point was having fixed sleep hours. I am somebody who has horrible sleep hours. So people say that this does not look good coming from me. But I think this is a book which I'm currently reading, and I would recommend reading Why We Sleep. I'm reading this to convince myself that we should sleep at night. But I think having a good sleep hour, a fixed sleep cycle is extremely important, and it will help you avoid fatigue. The next point was monitoring your time, and not just monitoring your time by yourself, but using tools which can help you do that. Rescue Time is the tool which I use, which has made me extremely productive on a personal front. It basically logs all the time which you spend on each and everything. And it also has a feature called Focus Time, which will basically help you get out of all distractions. Working out is another thing which people are missing out when they are actually working from home these days. I think this is one important thing which people should do, and this is not just with respect to their fitness. It also has to do more with their productivity as well. Three things which I recommend is low intensity aerobic exercise, yoga, or meditation, right? And then the thing was that when we are working from home, having good relationships with our colleagues is extremely important. Making those conscious decisions to schedule those meetings which have no agenda, but to talk about the vacation you once went on and what were the experiences there. I think people miss this big time when they're working from home. And next point was having scheduled breaks. Like some people just work in a stretch and that burns them out. And I think towards the end of this Corona world, what we might see is people burning out as well, right? Like Anjali said that she's been working a lot more than she used to, right? I think that's the case with most of us. The only problem is that if you keep doing it constantly without any vacation, without any breaks, without going out and staying in the same house, I think the chances of you burning out is extremely high. Now, the last point was dressing up while working. I just put this in because some people like doing it. I personally don't, but I think the reason I wrote this, or the reason why I'm talking about this, is because when you're new to work from home, the challenge is not dressing up or not dressing up. The challenge is convincing your brain that in this scheduled time I am at work. So I think it has more to do with getting in the zone and less to do with you dressing up. So if dressing up helps you be in that zone that you're at work, I think you should do that too.
Ayush, I'm getting questions on any productivity tools that you use.
Yeah, I think I can recommend a few. There is one. So I think first of all, when you're working remote, your life can very easily become bombarded with tools, right? So it's extremely important to control that. So I think I'll talk about three tools which are extremely productive for me. One is for personal productivity. I use Rescue Time, which I was just talking about. Rescue Time, you must check out. It creates a focus time slots. So every day I do 2 hour batches of along with 45 minutes breaks in which I read or go for music. So Rescue Time is one which helps you monitor your time and creates focus time. The second tool is Tick. So Tick is shared to-do list in which you can not only create a to-do list, but you can also add your colleagues to certain lists. And the first thing I do every day is create a list of things which I want to do. The third thing which I do, pretty basic, using Google Calendar. And I'll kind of like try to show here that how I sort of like schedule each and everything on the Google Calendar, which includes watering my plants to reading to music to everything. And I feel that the moment you do this, your life becomes just a lot more easier, right? One second. Yeah. So just scheduling everything, like it will take you probably 15 minutes to schedule this. You can create the recurring events. For example, cleaning the house is like a recurring event every day, right? For example, planting, watering my plants is a recurring thing every day. And then I basically schedule everything I have here, and then I look at doing whatever I'm doing. So these three things for personal productivity, if that question was. So Tick, Google Calendar, and Rescue Time.
Wonderful. So I will move on to some audience questions that have come in, quite a lot of them. And Anjali, if you can take the first one, this has been recurring question. So I think I will take this first. It pertains to, do you think there would be a reduction in salary when people are working out of home?
Sure. So I think so I have a view on this that the world is moving more towards deliverable and an outcome-driven environment, right? In an environment like that, it should not really matter that if I'm giving the same output sitting from my home, then why should the salaries be reduced? It's as simple as that, right? You should be paying the same for the same amount of work or the same quality work that somebody is bringing to the table. I do see reports. I do see there are reports that come in saying that employees are ready to take a 5% or a 10% cut if they are given a choice to work from home. I think employees prefer that option of working from home, especially I know from many people within the city that who hate to travel, so they don't want to, but then at the same time they're giving you the same output. So I am not a believer that your salary should reduce or anything because you are working from home or you are picking up a choice of working from home as we move forward. So that shouldn't be the thing. Yes, but you do end up saving a lot as an organization by having this option, right? So maybe I would look at it from the other point, which is accommodation cost. So if you are becoming an organization which can largely work from home, you are actually ending up saving a lot on that whole investment that goes in having so many branches, having so many offices. So move it that way rather than looking at cutting on employee salary.
Right. Ayush, your views?
Yeah, so I'll answer this in two parts so that I share the full context with the audience as well. I think the first one is that, guys, nobody predicted Corona, right? I think It is no one's fault. It just happened, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are great entrepreneurs and have got no choice but to go for salary cuts, right? So if we are talking about those organizations, I think I would exclude them from my answer, because I feel that these are unprecedented times, and if you're running a restaurant related company or a logistics company, or any company which has been heavily affected by coronavirus, you will have no choice but you will have to go for salary cuts, or whatever people are having to do, right? So I think that is the short-term impact which that is having, and I would encourage people to be together, actually work with their company, realize that it is not a decision which people are making. It is more of a pandemic hit thing in which people just have got no choices and they're trying to survive. The second part of my answer is going to be around macro, that how are things going to be from a long-term perspective. I have been a big believer of opportunities being universal in coming years. I believe that the world is getting smaller every single day. And when the world is getting smaller every single day, the opportunities will become accessible to all. And because of that, there's a lot of disparity with respect to salaries all across the world. I feel because of remote work, people are going to get access to jobs all over the world, and that will go towards generalization in salaries. Now, depending upon which sector you're talking about, I can talk about the sector in which I've got expertise, which is tech. I feel in tech, in macro, in long term, India has this opportunity to lead the world from front. Instead of being the back end of the world, we have the opportunity to become the front end of the world and lead the world into a better future. And from that perspective, I feel the opportunities, the wages, the salaries are only going to go up in macro. But I think short term, we are all going to face challenges, but in long term, it'll be good for not just India, but every part of the world, wherever talent exists and they did not have, good enough opportunities. I think there will be a world in a couple of years where opportunities will be more universal than it is right now.
Right. Anjali, the next question is from Mr. Chandrasekhar, who says, how does work from home impact the learning and development activities and expectations?
So again, taking a cue from what Ayush has said before, I mean, there are two scenarios, right? I mean, one which we are in currently, which is a lockdown scenario. I mean, you don't have any option but to do things in a certain way. And then there will be a time when you kind of go back to office, and then it is a different time as well. I think from a learning and development perspective, I think thanks to learning management systems, thanks to virtual classes and all already being in place, I see in current situation, we are really utilizing with all the tools available to the max. I mean, if you see with the new patches now done on Zoom, in between there was a bit of a concern around Zoom usage, but now with the new patches, you see Zoom is again available for people to use. We extensively use Google Meet to really run a lot of virtual classes of ours. So the way L&D, in fact, if you see people sitting at home, and they also need a bit of respite from regular work. So we are using this time to really take a lot of our online tools to them. We are constantly not just looking at very traditional virtual classrooms, virtual hangouts, but we are also looking at simulations, gaming tools to really, like we recently had a stakeholder management game where we got people to really play the game and see in terms of how good are they in terms of managing their stakeholders. And it was a change from a traditional classroom and even some simple webinars, etc. So people really enjoyed it. Similarly, we are picking up certain simulations to ensure how can we really help and build certain skills in people. So we are trying different kind of tools, different ways of engaging people. In my view, the emphasis on learning and development hasn't reduced. It has actually been immense during this period, because we have to ensure we keep our people truly engaged during this period. So learning as an agenda actually has gone a few notches up for us as HR professionals, and rather than going a bit down in this situation. And yes, all kinds of, in fact, if you see today, and we are also like, we do receive a lot of emails these days where organizations who are working on these kind of tools are reaching out to us to see how we can partner as well to ensure we are able to reach out to the larger crowd, and not just from a reach perspective, but keeping it more meaningful and more engaging for the audiences as well. So we are trying and experimenting and testing with several tools and keeping the learning and development as agenda as is, and in fact with more rigor in the current time. And it will continue, because if you see, even in the situation, we are not sure how quickly can traveling resume. We are not sure how quickly can you have gatherings. So I do see that in the whole of 2020, you will see people continuing to use these kinds of ways of making their people learn gaming tools and simulations rather than going back to classroom sessions immediately. Yes, of course, as the time becomes fine, blended learning was always an approach I think L&D had always picked up. So that will continue to be the case, maybe with a little bit more investment into the virtual tools.
Right. Ayush, the next question says, can work from home be 100% applicable? Staying away from office, does it build the necessary camaraderie required for a company's growth? Should there be a mix and match of both?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great question, actually. I feel that work from home is great in terms of productivity and also in terms of your individual contributions. But what it also does is that it sometimes like creates problems in which you require a lot more collaboration, which can also happen remotely. But the collaboration I'm talking about is specific to early stage startups, doing a lot more brainstorming sessions and basically being in positions where the team is forced to be together, right? The way we solve it is that at Pesto, we decided earlier this year that we're going to do an offsite every quarter where we all go somewhere, review our work, and sort of like come up with newer strategies. I feel a mix of both is somewhere where I think immediately, if I see something which can work out, I think a mix of both is a great thing to work, especially when it comes to the leadership of any company or people who are involved in the core team or in managerial positions. Individual contribution work, I think, can still be done in a remote environment. To the specific question that is it necessary to be remote in order to be productive? Absolutely not. It's like I think I would in fact encourage people to not go to offices Monday to Friday, but get together on a Saturday or maybe a Friday evening, which basically allows you to do certain meetings, hang out with people, build relationships if you are in the same city. So I think it's not a necessary thing to have, but if a part of your team is working from a similar place, then getting together always helps. But again, I would say that I would still encourage people to adopt remote infrastructure, because all of these things can be done in a remote infrastructure. It's a little difficult, but it can be, and it requires a lot of habit forming. So yeah, I think mix of both can work out. The way you do it is that you organize a lot of offsites, you do meetings over weekends, etc., or Friday, whatever works for you. And for the senior leadership to be together might be a good idea.
Great. So before we go on to the next question, I think the poll question was missed. So we'll try and bring that up on screen as we go on to the next question. And I would request the readers to take the poll. The next question is, Anjali, if you want to take this. The work from home is increasing these days, but can really work from home replace office culture and a professional environment? Anjali?
Yeah, so Pran, I mean, at the beginning, I did speak about that if we continue to be in a work from home environment, and if even post the pandemic, we want to encourage a work from home environment for a larger crowd, I think one of the most important things will be how do you replicate your culture virtually, right? And in that context, we did speak about that if your people are, more used to a water cooler moment, then how do you create in a work from home environment or a remote working environment as well? And Ayush also just touched upon that it's not about that there is no necessity that you have to be like I'm 100% work from home organization or a remote working organization. I think we were having a very casual chat around this topic sometime back, that in the future would it be that actually people will go to offices just to kind of feel together and feeling part of a larger group that you belong to this X organization, and to have those nice moments, because see, whatever said and done, I mean, there it's not that we are, we are seeing technology for the first time, right? I mean, we've seen so much of technology, come into our life for quite some time now. And whatever said and done, nothing can replace face-to-face. And let's be, we'll be very, open about it, that yes, nothing can replace, but yes, what's the best, method to kind of really be in a remote working environment, we can all think through. But face-to-face is something we as humans always look at. I mean, look at social distancing as a term being used, and people are like, okay, now is this what we will have to, live with, being socially distant from each other? And, long back, we always had this philosophy that, man or woman, we are social animals, right? So we like to be in a society. So that will continue to be there. So I do see that both will thrive in a way, and it is all about organizations. How do we really, get the balance out over there? But not very easy. As I said, I mean, we will all have a lot of hiccups while we make ourselves ready to be in a remote working program. And organizations have to really work hard towards it, because simple challenge I'll just throw to the audience and everybody is that we are struggling with people managers as is in a physical environment. Think about the challenges that you will have when you will have people managers low on emotional quotient working in a work from home environment. So how do we deal with that, right? So it's a simple thing, but needs a lot of work as such to be really ready for that.
Yeah. Before I get to the next question, Ayush, the app which you mentioned, remote, people want the spelling of it. They're not very sure how you spell it.
REMOTION. It's called remotion.com. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I hope everyone got that.
And I would like to add something to what Anjali was saying actually before finish, after you finish.
Yeah, no, please go on.
Okay, cool. So I think two things I had, like Anjali was saying that it kind of like is in office space, it's hard to manage them. So in the remote environment, it's like a different monster, and I agree to that. But I think like one of the things we have learned is that managing work and managing people and sort of like making sure that they're happy and they're collaborative, etc. I feel that once people crack it and once people realize how it can be done, it is actually going to be much more efficient, because in a remote environment, you can automate half the tasks, right? Half of the tasks. And that allows you to actually do this at scale. The second thing which we were talking about was the culture of a company, right? So I think if I look at it that if, I think culture is not about the free snacks you would have in office or anything else. But I think if I break down the culture, I would break it down in three parts. One would be the overall beliefs of an organization, what are the values you truly believe in, and things like that. The second part would be the behavior of people, how people collaborate with each other, how they feel talking to each other, how they behave. And the third part is the unspoken beliefs and underlying assumptions which people create after collaborating with certain amount of people, right? So I think if we look at this from these three points, I believe that the culture of a company can truly be an unspoken thing. And I feel that the culture of a company is actually predictability in behavior of each and every person in that organization. So if you're able to predict the behavior of a person, I think you understand the culture. The second part of the culture is collaboration. And a lot of times people confuse culture with collaboration, right? So I think the second part is collaboration and relationships. Now, this is something which is a solvable problem when it comes to a remote environment, right? So I think in a remote environment, we look at culture in these two different parts. One is the things which I just said, and the second part is collaboration. On collaboration front, I think you can discover a bot called Donut. You can discover this bot, you can integrate it with Slack, and you can make this bot create groups of people to do anything. For example, you can create a channel in which you do no agenda chat with other teammates in your company, right? You can ask this bot to organize a Zoom Hangout meeting every second day, right? You can do lunch meetings every day. You can make this bot pair you with one person, right? Create pairs across the company, and then you do your lunch together or coffee meetings together. You can make this bot, if there are enough people who like playing Counter-Strike, Dota, whatever, Catan, you can actually create this, ask this bot to match 4 people in a group every weekend so that they can enjoy doing that, right? So I think the collaboration things can be solved using tech this way, and then the values things which I talked about forms the culture of a company in a remote environment. which is extremely important, especially in a remote environment, protecting the culture.
Wonderful. Great. Uh, our very observant readers have noticed, Ayush, that you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're just wondering what time you go to sleep. But we'll let that question
Uh,
pass.
I usually sleep at 5, but I think they might have noticed in an off day.
Wonderful.
Sometimes.
So, Anjali, the next question is, how is work from home to be planned for gaining better results? So the second part of the question is which activities can be taken up as work from home, but I think we've already tackled that. So how do you plan to get better results?
Yeah. So I think I'll partly answer, and then maybe Ayush can jump in as well to answer on this question. So to begin with, I think somewhere we were talking about that, having, so what, I mean, I'll just share something from my own personal experience, because for the listeners, I am not a traditionally work from home person. I think I don't enjoy working from home as much, probably some people do, because I like the office environment, right? So what did I do differently in terms of ensuring I stay productive? First of all, I mean, you need to have a space which you call as workplace, even in your home, because it's important that you break off when you actually not working. You should be mentally be able to take really go back to your personal life. So have a space which you think is a space you like working. It's comfortable. Your seating arrangements, etc., and of course being very closer to the connections like routers, so that you have a great connectivity. Some of us are in a job where we constantly externally meet people externally as well. It could be a candidate, it could be even a client. So being presentable is another important aspect as well, because it depends on each industry and each work environment or culture of the organization. So these things, and treat it as any other work day. I mean, what has really helped me is that why treat it differently? Why change your sleeping hours? Like for instance, if I was waking up at 6 o'clock on a daily basis because I had to go to office, I still do that. Of course, in a lockdown, there are so much other household chores that you have to do. That's a different story. But even in a normal, regular time, if you are working from home, you should have a certain time in mind that, okay, if 9 o'clock your meetings are starting and your customers, the clients, the candidates are there, you have to ensure and calendarize yourself. I think we use Google Calendar to the hilt. Helps you so much. You're always you're nothing is which will miss your mind, or a task that will go out of your hand. So to ensure that you are very, very calendarized, even if it's a small simple task and you think what's the point of putting it on the calendar, because it's just a preparation and I'm the only person. I even put things like prep time, because I have to prepare for that meeting and I have to have that 5 minutes. So these simple things, and how I prepared myself was I used to actually get up and dress up for work every day, because it used to put me in that category that yes, I'm going to work even though if I'm sitting at home. And then of course, when I get back from work, I really get back from work. So try to have those discipline. I think discipline really, really helps you when you're in a work from home environment. And even now, as I'm working from home, I don't distract myself with things like my mother is calling or my, a friend is calling. I still treat it as like, work calls are more important, and I can speak later in the evening. So I think these simple tips have helped me being very, very productive. And yes, I know many working mothers who currently are facing a lot of challenge with respect to their kids being there and no house help at home. I think it's also important that you voice out. I mean, what your more productive hours are. So you ensure that your manager understand that these are your most productive time, and you need off time during lunch break, because you got to be feeding your family and your kids. So having that understanding with your manager, and as us as an organization facilitating that, also makes an employee extremely productive, because I know many people who are very young in my team and their productive hours are very different than mine. I let them operate in that because they work well there. I mean, one of my colleagues, she operates best when it's nighttime, and she likes to sleep a little longer. As long as I'm getting the results, I don't think I really have to be concerned. So those have been my guiding mantras during this time. Yeah.
I can totally see myself appreciating and encouraging that. Right. So I've got just
Absolutely.
one point to add to this. I think, again, I'll just share my screen here. This link is, guys, remote.pesto.tech if you want to get the link. Work remote is not work from bed, right? So I think having a workstation is super important. The reason I shared this link is because we basically created a repository of everything which you might need while working from home. And there are a few things which I'll talk about here, which is I think which people usually sort of like miss out, right? I think things like earmuffs, right? Let me give you this example. People think that working from coffee shops is possible. Believe me that this investment of buying this earmuff is a game changer for you if you really want to work from office space. From coffee shops, etc. Right? I think we have basically created this repo of all the best screens we could find, monitors, mouse, laptop stands, everything, which is here, and you can check that out. So the question that you really need a space, right? And if you think that you don't have space in your house, you really need to find that space, right? So that's the only point I was trying to make here.
Wonderful.
And
I
then
think
keeping it clean and
okay. So I think we are almost running out of time. I will just take the last question. Someone says,
oh yeah.
I can't really see your name, but it says, I think the discussion is hovering around town A and B cities. Uh, if we change environment to town C category, how do you think work from home will change in these smaller towns? Ayush, do you want to come first?
Yeah, that's the magical part. It does not change at all. Like, they've got people in Coimbatore, in Darjeeling, in Varanasi, in so in all parts of India actually. Like, I think the beauty of work from home is that it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you have the right equipments. All you need is a workspace and a fast internet. And if I talk about our experience in which we have basically placed all the Pesto graduates, I'll actually show you something which will, totally answer the question, that people think that it may affect, and I feel it's just a mindset thing. And I will prove that just by showing this. Can you see the screen? Yeah. So that is all the Pesto graduates. All the yellow dots are Pesto graduates and Pesto people who are currently reading. I can see people from West Bengal. I can see people from Bangalore, from even places I don't know, right? From Ahmedabad, Gujarat, Varanasi, UP, different parts of UP. We've got team members who are working from Balia right now, and it's totally fine. I mean, it does not impact that at all, and I think that's the beauty that remote work allows a person to go back to their hometowns and live with their families. And a lot of people actually need to live with their families to take care of the elder ones. And there's a constant message I get from my family as well that Ayush, you should just like enroll in your own program, go through Pesto, and just get a remote job and come back to Varanasi. So I feel, yeah, work from anywhere, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
I would just like to add to Ayush. I think we operate out of 23 offices in India, and these are not all in the big cities that we have. We have employees from Nagpur to Cochin who are working for us, right? And it's pretty much worked very seamlessly for us as well, because I think the infrastructure overall in India has also been improving over the years. And yes, there is need to do more, but it's pretty possible, as Ayush said.
Great. Anjali, Ayush, thank you so much. I think we are completely out of time. And one thing is clear that the great work from home migration because of this pandemic may usher in a new style of working. In fact, at the moment, some people seem overworked, stressed, and eager to get back to office. But with this virus around, I think they'll have to wait a little longer. Some questions remain around work from home, but we hope we've answered some of the more pressing ones today. Again, thank you, Anjali and Ayush, for your time and answers. And thank you, viewers, for watching this webinar.